The Knots Landing cast promised heartwarming stories when they launched their podcast in 2024. Instead, one actress dropped a bomb. She admitted she felt threatened by her co-star's beauty from day one. Then came the confession about a dust-up so bad that two actors walked off set together. 40 years of pretending to be friends was finally over. The January 2025 reunion got even worse, and after 40 years of silence, they're finally ready to expose each other. The story of Knots Landing didn't begin with applause. It started with rejection. In 1977, David Jacobs had a dream. He wanted to write a show that focused on ordinary people, on families, relationships, and the struggles of middle-class life. He pitched this heartfelt idea to CBS, expecting them to appreciate something so personal and honest. But the network didn't bite. They told him no. It wasn't flashy enough. They wanted something bigger, something grander, something more like a soap opera. Jacobs didn't walk away. He pivoted. If they wanted something glitzy, he would give them glitz. That pivot became Dallas. It premiered in 1978, packed with wealth, oil, power struggles, and ruthless family drama. It was everything CBS had asked for, and it exploded in popularity. But Jacobs hadn't forgotten the quiet show about real people. He was playing the long game. He had a plan. While building Dallas, Jacobs planted a seed. He introduced Gary and Valine Ewing, two characters who didn't fit the high-stakes Texas lifestyle. Gary was the middle Ewing son, a recovering alcoholic who never measured up to his brothers. Valine was his ex-wife, kind, simple, and overwhelmed by the power games around her. On Dallas, they stood out like misfits. But Jacobs had something else in mind. These two were never just side characters. They were the future. Behind the scenes, Jacobs was crafting a quiet revolution. He pulled inspiration from the 1957 film No Down Payment, a story about suburban couples and the struggles beneath their clean-cut appearances. He also looked to scenes from A Marriage, a 1973 miniseries by Ingmar Bergman, known for its deep, emotional storytelling. Jacobs didn't want just one couple like Bergman had shown. He wanted four families, 4 different marriages, all connected, all real. Then came the moment everything changed. Dallas was supposed to be just 5 episodes, but it exploded in popularity. CBS suddenly saw potential in expanding the world. Jacobs knew it was his shot. He brought back the original idea they'd rejected, but this time he had a trick. They could spin it off from Dallas. Gary and Valine could move to a new neighborhood. The story could shift from oil empires to suburban secrets. CBS said yes. The same idea they had once dismissed now looked golden, because now it was attached to their biggest success. Jacobs remembered the irony years later. He said, "Well, that's pretty good, but, you know." And then he pulled out the old Knots Landing pitch they had turned down before. One executive even asked, "Is there any way we can make this a spin-off?" The answer was yes. And just like that, Knots Landing was born. Not from instant success, but from patience, persistence, and a bit of genius timing. When the creators of Knots Landing began casting, they weren't looking for glamorous stars. They needed people who looked and felt like everyday Americans, people dealing with ordinary problems in extraordinary ways. This wasn't Dallas, with its oil barons and luxury ranches. This was supposed to be a street full of middle-class families. Barbara Miller led the casting team and made it clear from the beginning, realism mattered more than glitz. Ted Shackelford ended up playing Gary Ewing, but he wasn't the original Gary. That role was first played by David Aykroyd on Dallas. When it came time to spin off Knots Landing, Aykroyd wasn't available. He had other projects lined up, So Shackelford stepped in, but his casting didn't go smoothly behind the scenes. Joan Van Ark, who played Valine, had just worked with Shackelford on Wonder Woman. She didn't want to do it again. On a podcast years later, she confessed, "Oh my God, no. We're way too much alike. It wouldn't be a good match." She told that directly to the show's creator, David Jacobs. But Jacobs cast him anyway. Van Ark only found out at the first table read. Shackelford was sitting right across from her. At first, she was annoyed, but later, she admitted that the natural chemistry between them turned into one of the strongest parts of the show. The rest of the original cast was chosen just as carefully. Michelle Lee was cast as Karen Fairgate. She was the voice of reason, the emotional center of the neighborhood. Don Murray played her husband, Sid, a decent man who ran a local car dealership. Then there was John Plachette as Richard Avery, a lawyer with a drinking problem, and Constance McCashin as his wife Laura, trying to hold their marriage together. To show the younger side of suburban life, they cast James Houghton and Kim Langford as Kenny and Ginger Ward. They were newlyweds, young, in love, and still figuring things out. This mix of characters was no accident. The creators wanted every kind of suburban couple, from the idealists to the ones on the edge, to be represented. Whether it was long-time marriages or fresh starts, it was all supposed to feel familiar and real. Still, something was missing. In Season 2, that something arrived. Donna Mills joined the cast as Abby Cunningham, and everything changed. She played Sid Fairgate's sister, a recently divorced woman with 2 kids. She moved into the cul-de-sac, and from the moment she stepped on screen, the tone of the show shifted. Abby wasn't sweet or selfless. She was calculating. She wanted power, money, and control, and she didn't care who got hurt along the way. The decision to bring in Mills was strategic. The writers needed someone to stir up trouble, and that's exactly what she did. Years later, Mills laughed about how little she knew going in. "When I got the show, I had never seen it, and I thought it was a show about a houseboat with Andy Griffith." But Abby quickly became one of the most iconic characters. While others tried to fix their families, Abby tore them apart, if it meant getting what she wanted. That's what made the casting of Knots Landing so brilliant. Each actor brought something different to the table. Some brought warmth, some brought conflict, some brought chaos. But together, they turned a quiet suburban street into one of the most explosive dramas on television. Knots Landing made its quiet debut on December 27, 1979. It came with low expectations and barely any buzz. The timing didn't help. Airing during the holiday season meant many people weren't even watching TV. The first season had only 13 episodes, and the ratings were nothing to brag about. It averaged a 7.4 Nielsen rating, which made it seem like just another show that might quietly disappear. But critics saw something special. They liked how real the show felt. It wasn't trying to copy Dallas with big mansions and over-the-top drama. Instead, Knots Landing focused on everyday problems, marriages falling apart, and neighbors hiding secrets. That honesty made it stand out. While it didn't pull huge numbers, critics praised its complex characters and how it showed real suburban life. Still, the low ratings made CBS nervous. They expected more from a Dallas spin-off. At first, they weren't sure if it was worth continuing, but the strong reviews and a growing group of loyal fans helped save the show. CBS decided to give it one more shot. That second season changed everything. Donna Mills joined the cast as Abby Cunningham, and things took off. Ratings climbed to 8.1. Mills wasn't just a new character, she completely changed the tone. Abby was glamorous, smart, and ruthless. She wasn't afraid to seduce, scheme, or manipulate to get what she wanted. Suddenly, the drama felt sharper. edgier, more addictive. Abby's arrival sparked a chain of powerful storylines. People couldn't look away. The Season 2 finale sealed the deal. Sid Fairgate's car went over a cliff, and viewers were hooked. It proved that the show wasn't afraid to take big risks. Seasons 3 through 7 were the golden years. Ratings kept rising, and by Season 6, during 1984 to 1985, the show hit a 10.3 rating, its highest ever. Knots Landing had finally found its rhythm. The writers nailed the balance between real-life struggles and soap-style twists. There were murders, business battles, hidden affairs, and long-held family secrets, but it all still felt grounded. What really worked were the cliffhangers. Each season ended with a bombshell that made fans desperate to know what came next. The suspense was addictive. People tuned in religiously every week. During this peak, Knots Landing wasn't just surviving. It was dominating its slot and ranking among the top dramas on TV. Over its full 14-year run, the show averaged a 17.2 rating and held 29% of the viewing audience. It didn't quite reach Dallas numbers, but it didn't need to. It had something just as valuable: a steady, loyal audience that stuck around. That made the show a reliable hit for CBS and a favorite among advertisers. But the competition kept growing. By the late 80s, new shows like LA Law and Primetime Live started pulling viewers away. People had more options, and the TV landscape was changing fast. That shift could have crushed a lesser show. Yet Knots Landing held firm. Even with cast changes and new plot directions, the core audience stayed loyal. Viewers trusted the show to keep delivering. That loyalty became its superpower. Behind the glamorous scenes of Knots Landing, there was tension brewing that most fans never knew about. While the show delivered drama on screen, real conflict was happening when the cameras weren't rolling. And it started early, between two of the biggest names on the show, Michelle Lee and Donna Mills. The two actresses now openly talk about it on their podcast, We're Not Done Yet. But back then, it was anything but friendly. During Mills's first few months on the show, the tension was so thick it nearly exploded during a scene they were filming with co-star Ted Shackelford. The problem? Michelle Lee admits she had a director's brain and often tried to take control, giving unwanted direction to her fellow actors. But Donna Mills wasn't having it. She refused to be pushed around. During that heated moment, Mills and Shackelford looked at Lee, then silently walked off the set. Lee was stunned. All of a sudden, I had no idea what I did wrong? Of course I never do. But you and Ted gave me a look, and you walked off the set, she remembered. I thought, holy what just happened? Donna didn't sugarcoat her response. Don't push me around, she told Lee later. If you want something, tell me, but don't push me around. You can't do that to me. That confrontation wasn't just about ego or control, it came from a much deeper place. Michelle Lee later confessed that she felt threatened by Donna's beauty and presence. She admitted that those feelings went all the way back to childhood. I was one of the tallest girls in school, she said. I felt like an outsider. So here comes Donna Mills. It turned into this feeling I had, which is, she's the popular one, she's going to be the popular one, and I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Instead of letting that moment ruin their working relationship, Lee chose to be honest. She picked up the phone and talked to Mills directly, telling her how she really felt. And surprisingly, that honesty brought them closer. As the show moved into the 1990s, the problems behind the scenes started piling up. Things weren't just bumpy, they were chaotic. Season 13, in particular, became a full-blown disaster. Creator David Jacobs didn't hold back when he later called it an airplane crash. He added, "It's never just one thing that causes it." Everything seemed to be falling apart at once. The situation got so bad that Jacobs made a decision that was almost unheard of in television. He shut the entire production down. 3 writer-producers were fired on the spot. Storylines were thrown out and completely rewritten. It was a massive shakeup, showing just how desperate the team had become to save the show. At the same time, getting the cast together became harder than ever. By the final seasons, many of the actors had deals that allowed them to appear in just a few episodes each year. This made the show feel fragmented. Kevin Dobson and William Devane, who had become fan favorites, would sometimes vanish for several episodes in a row. Their absence made the cracks even more noticeable. Then came the drama surrounding Joan Van Ark. She had been there since the beginning, a cornerstone of the series. But in 1990, she announced she was leaving. She said it was about her growth as an artist. In her own words, "Security is in the shape of a kidney-shaped pool in Los Angeles, where you sit waiting for your residual checks. An artist should not be comfortable." It was clear she was chasing something deeper than stability. But things took a strange turn. After all the build-up to her exit, Van Ark changed her mind. She decided to stay on for 2 more seasons. This threw everything into confusion. Producers had already mapped out her departure, and now they had to undo those plans. Fans were just as confused. When she finally did leave in 1992, it felt like something vital had been taken away. The show had lost one of its emotional anchors. By this point, egos were clashing everywhere. It wasn't just creative tension, it was personal. Cast members have admitted there were jealousies and hard feelings that went beyond the usual stress of filming a long-running show. In the 2005 reunion special, those old wounds briefly reopened. During one moment, Van Ark joked that viewers probably tuned in just to see if the cast was in wheelchairs or on walkers. It didn't land well. One of her co-stars, whom she didn't name, demanded that the line be cut and the scene be reshot. The reaction was sharp and immediate. That one joke had touched a nerve. Aging, vanity, and reputation were now sensitive subjects, and that moment exposed how much those tensions were still simmering years after the cameras had stopped rolling. The cast of Knots Landing lived in a world where looks mattered as much as lines. Lisa Hartman, who played both CG and Kathy, admitted hair and makeup was a big part of the show. It wasn't just a small routine. According to Ted Shackelford, they would lose half a day just getting ready. Joan Van Ark took that beauty routine everywhere. Hartman once saw her driving through Beverly Hills, mascara wand in hand. She never left her sidekick, a small hand mirror with the Mona Lisa on the back, which the crew jokingly called Mona. It wasn't just makeup either. Speculation about plastic surgery swirled constantly. Michelle Phillips had dated one of LA's top plastic surgeons, Steven Zacks, for 6 years. When she showed up to the 2005 reunion, she fully expected to see signs of facelifts. But she looked around and reported, "No scars." Kevin Dobson even joked, "Fortunately, no one on this show has done plastic surgery. Not today, anyway." Romantic scenes looked steamy on TV, but filming them was anything but. Donna Mills laughed about it. "Sure, that looks really hot and sexy. It's not so hot and sexy when you're doing it." Despite how tame it might seem now, the show pushed serious limits for early 80s television. In 1982, they were already doing storylines on rape, murder, drug smuggling, and kidnapping. These weren't just plot twists. They were delivered with a sharpness and maturity that surprised even network censors. But real life didn't pause behind the scenes. Over the years, the cast suffered painful losses. Lar Park Lincoln, who played the cunning Linda Fairgate, died at 63. In the show, her character had been killed by her lover back in 1991. But her actual passing hit her co-stars hard. And when Kevin Dobson died in September 2020, it shook the entire cast. He had played Mac Mackenzie for more than a decade. A month later, the cast held a virtual reunion, which turned into an emotional tribute to him. Everyone had stories. Everyone had tears. There were also stories that never made it to air. In recent interviews, Joan Van Ark, Michelle Lee, and Donna Mills opened up about certain scripts they flat out refused to do. They didn't share all the details, but the message was clear. Some plots went too far, even for a primetime soap. The writers of Knots Landing were known for walking the edge, but now we know they sometimes went past it. And when they did, the actors stood their ground. That push and pull between wild storytelling and grounded resistance is part of what kept Knots Landing compelling for so long. ChatGPT said, in 2024, fans of Knots Landing were excited when Joan Van Ark, Michelle Lee, and Donna Mills announced their new podcast. It was called We're Not Done Yet. Everyone expected warm stories, laughter, and sweet memories. But what they got instead was something completely different. Right from the first episode, things felt off. Instead of playing nice and acting like lifelong friends, the women decided to tell the truth. And that truth was far messier than anyone expected. As soon as they began talking about their early days on the show, the mood shifted. They didn't sugarcoat anything. The friendly smiles faded as real emotions took over. They admitted that working together had not always been easy. There had been jealousy, competition, and hurt feelings hiding behind the scenes. The most intense moment came when Donna Mills turned to Michelle Lee and said, "I don't know if you remember, but the first few months I was on the show, we had a little dust-up. Do you remember?" Lee paused, then answered that she remembered, but she called it a tiff. That one word made it clear. They were finally talking about the conflict that had been buried for decades. What followed was raw and emotional. Michelle Lee admitted she had felt threatened by Mills, not because of her talent, but because of her beauty. She said, "You made me feel insecure, not because of acting, because I felt you were so beautiful." That kind of honesty surprised even longtime fans. It wasn't a scripted moment. It was real. You could hear it in her voice. And then came a name fans hadn't expected to be part of the drama: Ted Shackelford. He wasn't just a co-star, he had been right in the middle of the original tension. During one early conflict, Michelle Lee had taken things too far while directing. Donna Mills didn't appreciate it, and Ted Shackelford backed her up. They both walked off the set together. That moment revealed just how serious the tension had been. Shackelford taking sides made the division feel even deeper. But that wasn't the only surprise involving Shackelford. Joan Van Ark confessed something shocking. She had tried to block his casting in the first place. Her reason? "We were too much alike," she said. That one sentence opened the door to more questions. How many other behind-the-scenes decisions were shaped by personal feelings? How many casting choices came with silent disagreements? Instead of being a cheerful look back, the podcast became a spotlight on years of quiet resentment. It wasn't planned that way, but the more they talked, the more real things got. Fans didn't just hear stories. They witnessed decades of tension finally being unpacked. And not all of it felt resolved. The Hollywood show reunion in January 2025 was supposed to be a celebration. Fans had waited years to see their favorite cast back together, and the event in Burbank promised nostalgia, laughs, and a preview of their new podcast. But what they got instead was something far more uncomfortable. From the start, things felt off. Those who attended said the atmosphere was tense, not joyful like past reunions. There was something in the air, an invisible wall between the smiles and the truth. The timing didn't help either. Los Angeles was in the middle of a wildfire emergency, and some cast members weren't even sure they could attend. The stress of the natural disaster mixed with personal drama created a storm no one could ignore. Underneath it all was a story that had been hiding in plain sight. For years, actresses like Van Ark, Lee, and Mills spoke fondly of each other. They shared stories of friendship, loyalty, and a bond that had lasted decades. Fans believed it. Why wouldn't they? But now, that image is cracking. Mills said something that stopped everyone cold. It's not like it started out that way, because it really didn't. That one line rewrote everything fans thought they knew. It wasn't just a falling out after fame. It was never what it seemed from the start. The friendships had been marketed like part of the show, but behind closed doors, things were messy. And the way the cast is handling it only adds to the tension. Lee and Mills are open about their past conflicts, but their tone can feel defensive. Lee, in particular, said her controlling behavior came from having a director's brain. To some, that sounded more like an excuse than an apology. It was as if she wanted people to see her not as difficult, but as misunderstood. Still, Knots Landing didn't just entertain. It changed television forever. It took what people thought a drama could be and turned it on its head. Instead of stories that started and ended in one episode, it gave viewers something deeper. It told stories that stretched over months and years. You had to keep watching to understand what was happening. And millions did. That idea of following characters over time, watching them grow, make mistakes, and change, became the blueprint for modern drama. Shows today still follow the path Knots Landing helped build. Professor Ilana Levine explained it best. She said these kinds of shows were really foundational for all of American television economically. She believed they helped create the very structure of TV as we know it. By focusing on continuing characters and long arcs, Knots Landing laid the groundwork for everything from Game of Thrones to even reality TV. That impact still ripples through the screen today. It also changed the kinds of stories that were being told. Knots Landing was about suburban families, not rich dynasties in castles or billionaires on yachts. These were people who seemed like your neighbors, but behind closed doors, their lives were full of secrets, betrayals, and quiet struggles. That balance between the ordinary and the shocking became its signature. Viewers saw themselves in those characters, and they kept coming back. That influence didn't stop with the 80s. Desperate Housewives? Big Little Lies? Even newer shows that blend suspense and family drama. They all owe something to Knots Landing. The show proved that middle-class families with relatable problems could carry entire seasons. It wasn't about glamour. It was about emotional truth. And it worked. Critics noticed too. Even when Knots Landing wasn't winning every award, it was getting respect. It earned multiple Emmy nominations. William Devane was nominated for a Golden Globe in 1987 for Best Actor in a Television Series Drama. But beyond the trophies, the show helped lift the image of soap operas. It showed that soap didn't have to mean cheap or shallow. The writing was smart, the characters were layered, and slowly, the industry began to treat primetime soaps with more seriousness. Its run was historic. When it ended in 1993, Knots Landing had aired 344 episodes over 14 seasons. Only Gunsmoke and Bonanza had lasted longer in primetime drama. That's not just luck, that's staying power. It even outlived its more famous parent show, Dallas, and rivals like Dynasty and Falcon Crest. And what's most impressive? It didn't start with massive ratings. It built its audience over time. That endurance taught networks an important lesson. Shows didn't always need to explode out of the gate. If the quality was strong, viewers would stick with it. And they did. Now, in the age of streaming, Knots Landing is back. Platforms like Prime Video and Plex TV have made it easy for new audiences to discover the show. That's created a whole new wave of fans. Joan Van Ark, one of the original stars, spoke about this. She said, "I think it's late to the party in a way, because I think we deserve attention, and it should have been sooner than this. But we'll take it at any point." It's a second life for a show that always deserved more credit than it got. And maybe that's the real legacy. It wasn't flashy. It didn't always make headlines, but it kept telling great stories. It kept building real emotional connections. And in doing that, Knots Landing became one of the most quietly important shows in television history. Its fingerprints are everywhere, even if people don't always realize it.